Deltaforce is the most elite unit in the U.S. military. It's an Army unit. It's an elite raiding and reconnaissance force that was created in 1978 or 9 or so. That was originally intended to be for super niche missions, like if there were hostages being held, or if there's like a nuclear weapon that was loose, it was on the black market or something. Deltaforce was supposed to be like the president's, go-to, where he could deploy this small group of guys to take care of something that just absolutely had to go right. No fail mission is what they call it. But it really hasn't. It's evolved to be something different than that over the years, particularly after 2001 and after the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's evolved into something a lot more, a lot bloodier, and a lot scarier in many ways, and a lot bigger as well. JSOC is a larger formation that exists around Deltaforce. I think it's helpful to think of JSOC as the superstructure that enables Deltaforce. The Joint Special Operations Command, just as secretive, the government doesn't even officially admit that these units exist.
Right.
So that applies to all of them. And JSOC is based at Fort Bragg. Deltaforce is based at Fort Bragg. But JSOC also includes other units from other military branches. Most importantly, SEAL Team 6, which is a lot better known than Deltaforce, much more in the sort of public limelight. But those two units are the main components of there's other units as well. There's Air Force units. There's more exotic, like eavesdropping and reconnaissance surveillance units. But mainly it's Deltaforce and SEAL Team 6 is what we mean when we talk about JSOC.
Okay. Before I read this book, I heard you doing an interview with Abby Martin and Mike Preisner. And I was like, stop giving it away. Stop giving away what happens. But what's fascinating is that there's this murder that happens at the beginning of the book, but that's like only part of it. So it's actually not giving away because you learn about it in the opening pages. Talk about this murder that you open the book with, and that's kind of the narrative device, this murder mystery for the book.
Sure. In 2018, a Deltaforce soldier named Billy Levine, who had severe PTSD, he'd done 14 deployments with the units and had served in the assassination program in Afghanistan and Iraq, which I talk a lot about in my books, which is what Deltaforce kind of got into and became their wheelhouse after the surge in Iraq. They became an assassination team that was the main warfighting effort for years and years in Afghanistan and in Iraq. Levine had been through this ringer many times, and he had severe moral injury, PTSD, combat trauma, and he had a severe drug addiction. And so did his buddy, Mark Leshiker, who was his best friend, a fellow Green Beret. Not nearly, he wasn't a member of Deltaforce. Yeah, there's a picture of him. Great. That's Levine on the left, and that's Leshiker on the right.
Holding the weapon.
Yeah. So the guy in the formal uniform is one of the most elite military operators in the United States. Truly top tier, as you can see from all of his ribbons and decorations. He looks like a ghost because at that time that photo was taken, he's been smoking crack cocaine every day and using heroin every day for months on end, and has recently killed people stateside. That picture was taken in December 2018, and 7 or 8 months before that, he had killed the guy on the left, or on the right there, Mark Leshiker, and then had recently been involved in other shootings before this picture was taken. So you're looking at a guy, although he's shaved off his beard for that photo and dressed in his formal uniform, this is a man in a deep, dark spiral of drugs and violence that would eventually claim his life. He's not going to survive any of this. So those two guys that you just showed, they both had young daughters. They took them to Disney World in March 2018 for one of the girls' birthdays, and took so much drugs that Mark started wiling out and having paranoid delusions. And one thing led to another, was really getting on Billy's nerves. And this culminated with Levine, who had severe anger issues, just lost his temper and pulled out his gun and just shot Mark multiple times right in front of his daughter, right in front of both of their daughters.
So the guy who was in the formal uniform, just to clarify for people to understand, the guy in the formal uniform it shot the guy who's does he have like full arm tattoos?
Yeah, sleeve
Okay.
tattoos
Sleeve
are a big
tattoos.
thing in
Yeah.
the special forces.
Okay. Yeah. And what's
Um,
fascinating about that scene, and I think it speaks to a lot of the themes in the book, is that, and it took me a while. I kept having to read. I started reading this on physically reading the book, and then I started listening to it, and I actually really liked it. And I realized only like at the very end that the narrator is someone who I've listened to because he narrates Bosch mysteries, like the Michael Connelly books. I had to listen again and again because I was like, wait, am I getting this wrong? Because Levine, even though it's his friend who's wiling out, as you say, I kept thinking, like, I knew that one killed the other, and I kept thinking that it was the one wiling out who killed the other one. But really what happens, and again, we're not giving this away because this is at the very beginning, but really it's the one who's less out of control, although I guess they were both out of their minds on drugs at this point, but the one who's less out of control shoots the one who's more out of control.
yeah, yeah. And just so folks know who haven't read the book, I mean, this is literally chapter one. Unfortunately, a lot of people get murdered in this book. And the reason I start with this one is to show how Deltaforce operators have impunity to commit crimes. Because after killing the guy right in his house, he was arrested and taken to the police station, but almost immediately the charges just disappeared. He gave multiple inconsistent accounts of the shooting to different people, and then claimed, finally settled on the story that Mark had attacked him with a screwdriver. But the medical examiner determined that there was no screwdriver, there was no weapon. Mark was unarmed. He had nothing in his hands when he was shot and killed. Nevertheless, the police department pretended to believe this phony story because that's who Billy Levine is. His buddies, the other operators, they showed up at the police station to collect him. Levine was he was indignant that they had even brought him in and questioned him, and contemptuous of the detective who interviewed him because Levine wrote later, this guy thought he was a hard ass. Like he thought he was interrogating me. This is a guy who probably has, I don't know, 8 hours of training at some shitty hotel. That's what Levine wrote about this detective. Like, because Levine, of course, was trained in in resisting interrogation. He had been extensively trained in resisting interrogation. And so he did exactly that. And as I said, was kind of offended that they'd even arrested him because these guys had so much a sense of being above the law. And that wasn't the first, so they let him go. And the reason I start the book with that is to just illustrate, look, here's an instance in which this guy just committed straight up first-degree murder, and they let him go because of who he is. And then in the course of the book, he'll go on to commit many more crimes, none of which are going to result in a prosecution.